Good morning. Let's start by saying hello and welcome. We're going to welcome everybody as they start populating. We are here today on Saturday, Juneteenth, and we are having our seminar today, our webinar today. And it's about weeding and pest control. I can't remember the exact topic, my mistake here. But we have our good friend Jenny with us today from Garden Sphere, and Janda from the Enviro House, and my name's Gator. So those of you just joining us here, you'll notice that you are muted and no screen. Unfortunately, you don't get to smile. See, we don't get to see your smiling faces this day. But one way you can interact with us is through the chat. And if you could change it at the bottom where it says to all panelists and attendees, I can say hello here, and then everyone can join. You can also ask questions in the Q&A. And from time to time, our presenters will have a poll question where you can answer and interact that way. I'll start with one so you can take a look at it. Those of you just joining us, we'll give a few more moments for people to come in. The first question today is, how did you hear about this webinar? Did you hear from the Enviro News, email, Enviro House Workshop website, a workplace email, friend, colleague, or family member, a Facebook event or other social media, or other? Go ahead and put that in the chat. So those of you here attending today, please go ahead and answer the question here if you could, so we can get some of that data. It is completely anonymous, as will all the questions today and usually be. So go ahead and fill that. I'll give you a few more seconds to do that. And then we will turn it over. Janda, while I'm doing this, do you want to go ahead and tell us about what's coming up next week and the following weeks?
I can do that. And I did not pull that up, so this is from memory. Next Saturday, we have another heat pump webinar, and this one will focus on cooling, and it's a perfect week because Monday, I've heard, is supposed to be in the 90s. So we will be talking about heat pump applications for whole house, ductless, and heat pump water heaters, I believe we'll touch on. And that will be at 10:30 on Saturday. Kleeman Brothers is doing the presentation on that. And then the following week, I think, is July 4th weekend. We don't have anything scheduled for then. And then in July, we have some odd dates. We're doing composting with worms with John Inch. And I think that's on July 13th. It's on a Tuesday. What else are we doing in July? We're doing one with Hal Ming again on pickles, preserving and doing pickles of cucumbers and vegetables. That's the end of the month. There's one more. I'll think of it.
Let me see. We have pickling cucumbers. That seems like the last one on the 24th. That might be the last.
Yeah.
So excellent. Thank you, Janda. All right. So I had, let's see, we have our poll question. I'm going to go and show that. Seems like most of the attendees today got it from a Facebook notification or event, and some got it from the Enviro News email. So great. Looks like we need to figure out other ways to help share this stuff. So, all right. Well, that's where we are. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat the email or the web address where you can look at past recordings. And this is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it when it's all done. So if anything gets, goes over too fast, you can always go back and watch it. You can go to cityoftacoma.org/workshops, and you can also register for future events and then watch the previous webinars that we do have. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jenny Call. Welcome back. Always good to see you.
Oh, hello. Hi. So my name is Jenny, and I am representing Garden Sphere. And Garden Sphere is located in the north end of Tacoma, and I am a local. So I grew up here in Pierce County. I grew up in Fife on all the farms, and I have a degree in sustainable agriculture, and I'm also a classroom educator. So I'm all about educating all ages in all kinds of stuff, and I absolutely love it. I've done lots of workshops for the Enviro House, and I think they're so important to help people become more confident in their gardening skills and maintaining in a environmentally and sustainable way. So today we're talking about weeds, pests, and we're talking about safe ways to kind of mitigate those, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you. And there we go. So we've got weeds, pests, and non-toxic solutions. And you can see that Garden Sphere address, phone number, and email are at the bottom, and that'll also be provided at the end as well. Everybody there is super knowledgeable. So let's see. Boop. Oh, there we go. Let's see if I can get this to, there we go. Let's go back one. Sorry about that. There we go. Here's our first poll question. So what are you having the most trouble with in your yard? You've got pests, weeds, your lawn is an issue maybe, if you're in your garden, or if you have any other issues that are giving you really big trouble. Go ahead and put that in the chat.
Yeah, and those of you who have just joined us, we had a few late arrivals, so don't forget you can watch this back at cityoftacoma.org/workshops. We are talking about pests, weeds, and non-toxic solutions. I like that idea, so that's always great. We'll give them a few more minutes, a few more seconds to answer the poll question. Pest, weeds, lawn, garden, or other. So if you do have an other, please put it in the chat so we can help share with Jenny what it is you are, coming up against as far as trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll give them about 4 more seconds. We got a few more people joining late. Oh yeah, you'll probably not be surprised by this result. So let's take a look at the results. I'll leave it up for a few moments. I mean, who knew, right?
Weeds. Yeah, actually, that's very interesting because I know that aphids are in full force right now due to our humid conditions the last week or so. So they've been hatching and laying like crazy. So I thought for sure there'd be a few pests in there, but weeds, yeah, weeds, cool, all right.
All right, there you go.
That'll be easy for me. All right, so the first thing that we are going to talk about are weeds. So here is a nice list of the most common weeds that we're dealing with in our yards, and that in the garden, in your lawn, kind of anywhere. And I like to think of weeds as plants that are growing where you don't want them to be. So even if you have, say you had a tomato plant and the summer before, some tomatoes dropped on the ground and they rotted there. Well, tomatoes are notorious in reseeding themselves. So maybe you have a bunch of tomato starts that are growing in this area that you're like, what? I didn't even want this to be here. That would be a weed. So it's any kind of plant that you don't want growing somewhere, or it's competing with something else that is more important to you. And so these are some of the most common plants that seem to kind of take over in areas that we just don't want them. So, so we would call them weeds, right? So we've got our purple dead nettle, our herb Robert, which we all call Stinky Bob. And Stinky Bob is in the geranium family. You'll see I have got lots of pictures of each of these. We've got dandelion, bindweed, chickweed, horsetail, shotweed, catchweed, or as we call them here, I grew up calling them burrweed, the Himalayan blackberry, plantain, lamb's quarters, lady sum, which is also called a Jesus plant, dock, thistle, quackgrass, and crabgrass. Now, those are 2 very different things, and sometimes folks get them confused and intertwined with each other. So most commonly, people have quackgrass issues, but there is crabgrass in a few different places.
Now, Jenny, 2 things. Is that your rooster making all that noise, or your chickens?
It is.
Nice. That's great. I love it. The other thing I have a question about is the Himalayan blackberry. Now, I love blackberries. Now, is this a different, or is this the most common blackberry found in this region?
This is the invasive blackberry, yes. We actually have native blackberry here in the Pacific Northwest. We have actually a couple different types of native blackberries, and those tend to be vining on the ground. They don't go upright. The Himalayan, its growing pattern is to grow upright and out. And they tend to have quite large stalks. That's the one we see everywhere. You have a bare patch of ground, you know, birds travel those seeds and they just make their home there. That's our most invasive, and it is not native to our area. So the Himalayan blackberry can be quite invasive. The other one is bindweed. Bindweed is also kind of an invasive weed. It is also called morning glory. Now, the other, we have a lot of morning glory annuals that are grown by florists and people who enjoy creeping flowers. Same family, this just happens to be the invasive type bindweed. So yeah, I mean, the Himalayan blackberry, you can control them and eat their berries. They're delicious, right?
Right. Yeah, blackberry pie is one of our favorite things. So, but yes, I knew there was the invasive species, and I just wanted to make sure that was the most common, the Himalayan, not some, you know, because sometimes they name things something, but it's really not that. Like, this is a such and such berry, and I'm like, but that's not really a berry. Anyway.
I know.
All right, thank you.
Himalayan is the one that we this is super invasive. So that's the one where people are picking because they're like, well, it's here, might as well pick some, make some pie or jam, you know.
Right.
So
thank you.
So here are some photographs of these plants. Now, if you haven't seen these before or haven't been able to connect the plant with a name, this is going to be super, super helpful for you. So we're going to start with our purple dead nettle. It's right here. Grows to about 12 inches tall at the most. Can get a little bit taller than that, but generally you're going to find them at 12 inches. And the tell here is that they grow upright. And the tops are going to have this nice burgundy color to them, and then it'll be green on the rest of the stalks. And when they do go to flower, they're going to be tiny little pink flowers all the way around. Purple dead nettle can be used. You can eat them, dry it for tea, things like that. But most commonly, it just becomes, it kind of takes over in a spot. So this is purple dead nettle right here. And then we have our stinky bob. It's in the geranium family, so you'll notice if you are familiar with geraniums, you'll notice that the leaf pattern is very similar to a fragrant geranium. Those citrus and the fragrant geraniums is very similar. They're going to have the little purple pink, sometimes quite pink flowers at the end, and they spread, they make a mound and they'll spread. So this is our stinky bob, which I just love to say, it's just fun. And then of course we have our dandelions. Now, right here, flowering, right? They form a nice mounded flower, and then they have those poofs that we all as kids probably picked and then blew, and then they just go everywhere. And our parents are like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? You just made all these seeds go everywhere. So dandelions, now dandelions are a tell for very clay soil, also for a very acidic soil. So a lot of different things are going on. When you see dandelions in certain spots, they're missing some nutrients there. So you can really mitigate those. A lot of folks will leave dandelions in for different various pollinators we have because they do bloom quite early. So they've got our cute little dandelions there in the lawn there. Bindweed right here. Now you'll see that it has that beautiful morning glory flower. They're very pretty. The big thing with bindweed, folks, is that any section of the vine, any section of the root, even the teeniest bit, if it is left in the ground or gets dropped or left in the area, it will root and create another plant. Bindweed is invasive. The best way to deal with it is to pull it up as much of the vine underground as you possibly can. So you're going to find the vine. This vine will travel along the ground. It'll wrap itself on anything. If anything that's near it, it'll try to wrap itself and grow up. That's what it really wants to do. But under the ground, you're going to find in the ground, it goes down about 5 to 6 inches, sometimes 8 inches under the ground, and it'll form the vine and it'll just keep making new shoots from that. So it's really important to get as much of it as you possibly can. It's quite difficult to get rid of. You know, managing it is possible. Managing it is definitely possible. You just don't want it to spread, and you want to make sure you pick it up as much as possible. Bindweed is in my top 3 of like notorious, like the wanted poster of weeds for me is bindweed is one of them. We have chickweed here. Now, chickweed is fun. Chickweed is so fun. It's funny enough, chickens love chickweed. It's quite full of nutrients. Some folks, they will eat it in their salads, put it in salads. It is edible. It's an edible weed. So if you really love it, maybe it doesn't become a weed anymore. Maybe it becomes something that you cultivate. It's quite tasty and full of nutrients. However, it does spread like wildfire. And the little flowers, they have tons of little seeds in those little flowers, and they just will propagate everywhere. And so chickweed is very easy to pull up though. It's very easy to maintain. Dead nettle, also super easy to pull up and maintain, as long as you get it before the seed heads drop. Stinky bob, also super easy. The dandelion, the roots are quite deep, and so you may not get the entire root and you might see it come back. Bindweed, very tricky to get rid of. Chickweed, super easy to get rid of. You just have to make sure to get it before it seeds itself. But you could just, you know, pick it and eat it. It's kind of tasty. So this is what chickweed looks like, and that's a super common one, especially in places that have, you've maybe grown a garden in that area. They like places that have had a little bit of compost in them, right? So nutrient-rich places is where you're going to find the chickweed, okay? And this is the catchweed. Now, this is what we also call, in our family, we call it the burr weed. So you can see these little burrs. Now, it has kind of a star-shaped flower. It will grow up, and it's as if it has Velcro on the stems and on the leaves, and it'll just like attach itself to everything, and it can get quite big. And then those little burrs are actually, they're little flowers, little white flowers, just like the chickweed flowers. And they create these little burrs, and every single one of those little burrs attaches itself. So if you have animals or dogs or cats or anything that goes inside outside, sometimes you'll see that these burrs are attaching itself. Well, it attaches itself to clothes, it attaches itself to everything, wildlife, anything. So all of those then become more, and there's hundreds of these on one plant, just hundreds. And it can be quite difficult to get rid of if you've accidentally let it go to seed just one time. So just to review these 6, we've got our dead nettle, easy to get rid of. We have our stinky bob in the geranium family, super easy to pull and get rid of as long as you catch it before it seeds. Dandelion, a very deep root system, so you're gonna have to dig quite deep to get the full root on that one. Bindweed, very tricky to get rid of, but you do need to make sure you get rid of all of the parts, even the leaf parts, because they will root and create new plants. It'll grow anywhere, just like dandelion is a tell of some kind of deficiency. Bindweed will absolutely grow anywhere. It'll grow anywhere that you don't want it. Chickweed is super easy to get rid of if you want to just pull it before it goes to seed, and in a nutrient-rich place. And the catchweed you will find anywhere, really. It likes acidic soils more than basic soils, so you'll find those. So let's go to the next slide with our next set of plants. Shotweed. Shotweed, if you catch it before it grows stalks like this, so you can see it has these stalks here in the flowers. It actually is quite tasty in a salad. But they just like its name, it will flower, and then once those flower heads form seed pods, those seed pods shoot hundreds of little curly seed pods everywhere, and they will shoot quite far, up to 5 feet. They just one plant. So shotweed, if you catch it before it is seeding, you can manage that quite easily. Easy to pull up and easy to get that full root system. But if you don't catch it before then, just know that even if you brush up to it on accident, it's gonna explode with the seeds, and those can go quite far. So this is our shotweed. Here is our plantain. Now, plantain will grow in acidic soil. It really likes the acidic soil. Shotweed likes soil that has some organic matter. It's got some nutrients in there. Plantain really enjoys acidic soil. So Pacific Northwest, perfect for plantain. Again, you can eat the leaves, it's quite tasty, but they also have a very deep root system. So it can be quite difficult to get rid of if you're just using, digging it up. And right now we're just talking about digging up and how to remove them by hand. It can be quite tricky to get the whole root system. So that's plantain. And let's go to dock first. So we've got dock here. Dock has an incredibly deep root system, like the dandelion. It is in the sorrel family. So if you get the leaves really, really small, they have kind of a sharp, tart taste to them. But they do spread quite quickly. They get very long flower stems, stalks, and the seed does quite grow, it spreads quite quickly, and it's very, very deep, deep roots in the dock. This up here is called lamb's quarter, and lamb's quarter has a quite tender leaf system, easy to pull up. They can get up to about 18 inches tall. So they're quite tall, edible if you choose. Livestock like to eat them, but pretty easy to pull. Here is what we call in our family the Jesus plant. And it's a lady's thumb. Now you can see that we've got long leaves. They can get quite tall, up to 2.5 feet tall if allowed, but even as short as 4 inches tall. So, but their tell is this, this flower head. It's pink. They're quite pretty, actually. But they spread like wildfire. Millions of little seeds pop out. And if those are allowed to spread, it is very, very difficult to get rid of. They stay in the soil a long, long time. You could take one set of seeds away and all of a sudden you have another upcrop. I am actually battling this plant right now on my property. Very, very difficult to get rid of just because of the seed spreading capabilities of this plant. It's pretty impressive how fast it can spread and how easily it seeds and how long those seeds can stay in the ground to then germinate. So watch out for this one, but it is easy to pick out, so maybe it's more time intensive to pick out and weed, but you've got millions to deal with. So that's a big one. And here we have thistle. Thistle, some people use thistle medicinally. It's quite prickly. I like to pull it up as quickly as possible. The root systems are very easy to pull up. If you do let these seed heads form and then go, they will spread like crazy. So thistle is a big one. A lot of times people just are like, thistle, really pretty flower, but ouch. And so, you want to get that out of the ground, very easy to pull. Some of the, I've got 3 that are not pictured. I've got buttercup, which I forgot to list, my bad, crabgrass and quackgrass. Now the buttercup, it is a spreader. The seeds actually can stay in the ground for a long, long time, 20, 25 years can stay in the ground. Once it's disturbed, boom, buttercup. Okay, so it can stay in the ground quite long. Buttercup is pretty difficult to get rid of, just as far as the germination rate of those seeds. And they also spread by rhizome. So they're gonna, like a strawberry plant, they're gonna have a little baby shoot come out, it roots itself, baby shoot, roots itself, baby shoot, roots itself. So it's very prolific and easy to, it wants to make lots of buttercup babies. Now the biggest one with crabgrass and quackgrass. Crabgrass forms in a clump, quite easy to pull up. The root system is very shallow. Crabgrass ends up being actually quite short as well. Now, the big one that seems to be a huge issue for a lot of folks is quackgrass. Now, quackgrass, under the soil system, it creates these rhizomes. It will continually spread and run underground and come up. Now, those are very hard to get rid of. And just like the bindweed, any little part that gets broken off, it will root itself. So that's a huge one. And I apologize for not having those 3 pictures up here for you.
Jenny, we do have a question in regards to, is there a good way to ID stinging nettles with wild raspberry plants? And if there's any apps that you might recommend for this sort of work?
Ooh, nettles are done for the season. That's kind of a very mid-early spring type thing. And so when the raspberries are leafing out, the nettles should be winding down and or going into the next step of their cycle. So they end up being pretty easy to ID. And of course it depends on weather, right? And where you're going. So timing on that one is a good one. For that. I haven't found, I know there's lots and lots of plant ID apps out there. I don't use them. My partner does use them and likes them, but off the top of my head, I can't recommend any one. I know the Oregon State University, I don't think they have an app, but they have a wonderful resource of weed identifying information, pictures, lots of good stuff, the Oregon State University. So I tend to go to them first, or I go to the WSU extension and I'll ask them if I'm really stumped on something. That's what I'll do. But yeah, there's so many apps out there. It's really finding one that is useful to you. Some of the apps, they allow you to take a picture of it and it'll ID it immediately. Some of them have like put in the characteristic and then it'll bring up all of the plants and the pictures of the characteristics of that, of what you had, put in is their characteristics. They'll bring up all the plants that have those and you just kind of look at them. So I think it's finding one that is user-friendly for you. If you're out in the field a lot, you may want to get an app that you can take a picture of the plant and then that goes into their system, into their application, and then can give you a name or at least a list of what they might think it is. And
some of those apps do, you have locations, so you can say that I found this in this neighborhood or this area specific. That can be helpful to a lot of people. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that can be super, super helpful. I know my partner uses it quite frequently, and then I have friends who use those applications, but they all use different ones. So I think it's just really finding one that is super in tune with your modality of using apps. So I know that wasn't specific, but
no, it was good though. I think it's helpful to have that,
Yeah, because everybody is different at using their devices, and different devices use different apps better than others. So kind of depends. Yeah. So weed prevention really starts with maintaining a healthy soil, right? So depending on what you're growing, whether it be your lawn, garden, maybe you're using native plants, keeping those done, making sure they're healthy. It's all about the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, okay? So having that balance and the ratio and those micronutrients in the area that you want them, okay? So buttercup really loves acidic soil, right? So anywhere you're gonna have your blueberries or your strawberries or anything, rhododendrons, buttercup's gonna be their friend. They're gonna be up there going, hey, I love the soil you're in. It's gonna be tricky. So you're gonna have to go to other things to try to get rid of that buttercup. But like chickweed won't grow there, because they want that composty. They really want a nice composted soil. They don't want acidic soil that the rhododendrons and the blueberries and other things really enjoy around here, the native plants enjoy, they're not going to grow so much there. But they might grow in your vegetable garden, so you kind of got to make sure you've got that balance so that you already know what to expect, right? So if you have, your vegetable garden, for sure you're going to probably have dead nettle. You're probably going to have some chickweed. The lady stem probably going to grow there. You're probably going to have, if you have bindweed in the area, it's going to want to grow there. Blackberry, the Himalayan blackberry, it's going to want to set in there. So, but then it might not be in other areas, so knowing the nutrient requirements for your area and knowing how to keep those balanced and that ratio is going to be really important. And that's your first step in weed prevention. Some other things you can do is using compost, fertilizers, and worms. Now, compost adds that organic matter to our clay soil. And Pacific Northwest, notoriously, we've got clay is going to show up somewhere, right? Even in the valley, Puyallup Valley, where the wonderful, soil is just like silk. You dig down deep enough and there you're going to find clay. So, adding that organic matter will work that clay loose, and you're not going to have as much dandelion because of that fact right there. You're not going to have as much dock. So that, you're going to have some weeds, or common weeds, aren't going to want to be there because the environment isn't right for them. It's not to their benefit. When you're using fertilizers, you want to use a slow release, water soluble fertilizer. Specifically, if you can, an organic base or an OMRI certified base fertilizer. Water soluble is going to be a big deal. Because you want it to release slowly. I know that it can be really great when you're in a vegetable garden to use, say, a seaweed liquid base, right? So you would add that to water, do a mix, and spray, do a foliar feed, right? That's great for those annuals and things like that. And it's maybe okay on a, maybe your raspberry plant's giving them a hit right before they start turning and things like that. But that slow release fertilizer is going to just, every time it gets wet, every time there's rain, it'll just release those nutrients out. And so you're more readily going to be able to keep that ratio in check, keeping that nutrient ratio in check. Red wigglers. Now, they are different than our earthworms, right? So red wigglers are quite small. You're going to see them in composting quite frequently. And what will happen is that they like to aerate, and they will break down organic matter much more quickly in soil than the earthworms. Now, earthworms, they're quite large, and they do aerate and they do break down, but they are more of a solitary worm, okay, and a nematode, and they don't want to hang out in a group. Okay, red wigglers, they will hang out in a group, and they will work as a group, and they will hit an area. Now, they don't stay in the soil area that doesn't have organic matter to break down. So if you don't have any organic matter, say you're putting some compost down, maybe you've been composting your food scraps, right? And it's not completely broken down, but you put it out anyway. Red wigglers are going to be perfect for that, okay? They're going to keep that balance going, and they're going to encourage microbes to come into the soil. So that also keeps a ratio, the ratio in the soil for that area really great, okay? It breaks up that clay, breaks up soil really nicely. Super important stuff. Now, if we're talking about a lawn, Weed Beater and the Weed and Grass Control by Whitney Farms, they really are the safest to use. They are the least impactful environmentally, and they're a selective herbicide. So they're not going to kill your grass and I say kill, but they are going to make sure to kill back your dandelion, your stinky bob, your various things that are in your lawn that you don't want there, quack grass, things like that. They're going to take that on. It might not work so great with the quack grass and crabgrass because it is in the grass family. You may have to be strategically and get those, but dandelions and things, it'll get rid of those quite nicely. And these are the safest ones to use for that, for sure. I know dock does grow in lawns sometimes because they have that really deep root system. And so they will want to grow in lawns as well. So it's kind of figuring out what are there. A lot of broadleaf weeds, weed beater, and the weed in grass control work really well. Some other herbicides, things that kill plants. So you can use a propane torch, and it's not toxic, right? So you can get the big dragon. It's quite large at the end and can do a very large area quite quickly. There's a smaller dragon torch that has a more precise torching end, so you can really get specific about it. Now, it really is only useful when the weeds are quite small, because what you're doing is you're torching the greenery and it kills it back. It does not kill the roots, okay? None of these things are going to kill that root system or the system of the plant. And so know that the torch is going to kill the greenery, which then they can't get food in to feed those roots. So the likelihood that it will starve the root system is pretty high, and it will eventually die. It can be cost prohibitive because you have to get a large tank for the big dragon, and just the little canisters for the small dragons. But again, you're also using a fuel. Okay, so it's not necessarily as environmentally restorative, right? You can't keep using it and using it and using it. You have to keep buying it and buying it, buying it. Vinegar is pretty good. It's a great topical. Now, there are different percentages of vinegar, and it does burn out that leaf matter. It may cause a soil death, and it's not that everything's dead per se, but maybe it has it's killed off some of those microbes. It's killed off it just isn't as balanced anymore, it makes it super acidic, so you're going to have to lime the affected area if you are using vinegar very, very regularly to kill the topical. But it's super effective. Like on a day like this, spraying vinegar in the morning, by the end of the day, all of those weeds are going to be just withered away. It's really, really effective. Just be mindful of where you're spraying, because say if you're spraying next to your vegetable garden and you hit those broccoli leaves or something, it will affect them too. So you have to be really careful. But it's super cheap and super effective. Burnout is great. It's clove oil and citric acid. Super easy to get, right? Very good at burning, doing that topical burn. Again, it's not going to get that root system, but if you keep doing it, if you do it, reapply it several times, it will starve out that root system and that weed will not come back. Burnout is probably the most effective out of all of these for the topical burns. And on a day like today, it is prime to use. It is, you have to buy it as a product to buy. So, it is going to be more expensive than, say, getting your vinegar. I would say Burnout and the propane are about at the same cost level. But there's a mixture on there, so you can mix it up and spray it on. Okay, and it's just clove oil and citric acid, so it's not going to hurt anybody. It's not going to hurt any of your animals or nature or anything like that. So It's super effective. I've used burnout before. I've used vinegar and I've done the torching. So all three of them will work. But every single one of these methods, you are going to have to do it several times to eradicate the weed, because it's not killing the system. It's not killing the root system. It's killing the leaf matter on top. Okay, so it's getting that topical burn so that the plant can't feed its roots. So you're going to have to apply it and apply it and apply it, you know, up to 3 to 4, maybe 5 times, depending on how big that plant is. If you can catch the plants early, you know, when they're not super big, when they're, you know, little guys, it'll be easier to eradicate. I hope that makes sense. Here's our next poll question.
Excellent. I would like to state that also using fire is dangerous, so just be safe. All right, our question today: do you feel, now having this information at this point in the webinar, do you feel more confident in dealing with the weeds in your yard? It's a yes, no, sort of, or I have more questions. You can always add those to the chat if there are specific questions. Mm-hmm. One of our panelists asks, what about the spurge family, weed or annoying plant? I don't know what the spurge is, so that must be.
Oh gosh. Again, a weed is, if you don't want it there, then it's a weed.
Sure.
You can pull it out best you can, you know, get those root systems. With most of these, if you can get all or most of the roots, you've done pretty good. You know, you've already set that plant back quite a bit. So spurge, you know, it's very pretty. So it kind of grows in a columnar. It has lots of leaves that fronds out. It is a really, really pretty plant. And the flowers are cool. The little kind of conical, almost look like suction cups, right? And it's gorgeous. But if you don't want it there, then it's a weed.
Well, there you have it. All right, so let's give people 4 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Here's your poll. Let's take a look at those results.
Good. Sort of. That's okay. Keep asking questions. You know, if it's sort of is even like a, hey, you know, if you have more questions, go for it. Put them in the chat. And one other person has more questions. Keep asking them.
I do have their question here. Okay. It says, I've used salt dissolved in vinegar with a dash of dish soap for weeds in compacted gravel. It works, but now I know why weeds come back. So that was there.
Yeah, you know, friend, I would really avoid using salt. Salt does a lot of damage to our water system, especially if it's in the gravel. It's going right into our water system, and salt is really damaging. I would just use the vinegar. You can get a higher percentage of vinegar, and I know there's lots of places you can get it, not just regular vinegar that you do canning with, but it's quite strong. Try to get the higher level vinegar. A lot stronger vinegar instead of putting that salt in there. And just a note, so if you are using soap, make sure it is not antibacterial soap, because you do want those microbes, even below that gravel, you still want those microbes in the ground. They're helping you out. So antibacterial soap, no, avoid. And if you're already avoiding it, nice work.
Another question. I know bees love clover, but is it hard to remove it or contain it? Any tips? I know you're going to address clover, I think, in a moment, right?
Yeah.
So good. I'll leave that out there, and then we'll hit it up again. And then what's the purple flower behind you is also popped up as well.
Oh yeah, okay. So the purple flower behind me is called salsify, and that is actually a root vegetable. So I planted it last year, and going into its second season, it produces these beautiful stalks, and these flowers only come out in the morning. I thought it was just in the sun, but after watching it, it only opens in the morning, and by about 1 o'clock, they're all closed again. And if it's shady, it'll close back up again. And they're very flat. So they almost look like an African daisy, but they're just gorgeous. You can eat the roots, delicious roasted with, say, carrots and potatoes. to die for. They're beautiful. They stayed evergreen the entire winter. So they stayed beautiful and tall all winter long. And then I got this beautiful surprise of this flower. And the seed heads, I got to tell you, the seed heads are gorgeous as well. They're globe, they're huge, and they're just so geometric. So it's salsify. It's a pretty cool plant. Now clover, I love clover, friends. I love clover. I actually, I encouraged my mom after she got her yard thatched, her grass, her lawn thatched, to instead of putting down grass seed, put down clover seed. Now, I cannot emphasize how wonderful clover is. It does not, white clover, okay, does not grow very tall, stays evergreen, has flowers for the pollinators. It is a nitrogen fixer. So not only does it just stay green for you, it doesn't get very tall, you have these beautiful flowers, but it is building soil health. And it's feeding all of the plants around it. It is so cool. So it's wonderful to replace your grass with some clover or have it kind of mixed in with your grass, okay? You'll notice that you're gonna be mowing that grass more than you're gonna be mowing that clover. Now, if you don't want clover, remember any plant that we don't want where it is a weed, right? So if you don't want it there, the root system goes down and out, okay? So it's gonna go down in the middle, but then it's gonna spread out and down. So it can be a little bit tricky to remove if you are trying to remove it. The best way to remove it is to till it under or to dig it and flip it upside down. Okay, because then what you're doing is you're putting that nitrogen and all that good green matter, green manure back into the ground. And that's what a lot of folks will do on these organic farms is they'll put out the clover, they'll get it, they'll turn it, or they'll work it back into the soil before those flowers even form. So it has tons of benefits, and I cannot talk more highly about white clover. Now there's different types of clover too. So you have your crimson clover, you have your purple clover. Purple clover will, those two and the crimson, they get quite tall, up to 2 feet tall if you let it. Those flowers, they don't stay evergreen. They kind of die back, and but they do have beautiful flowers. So that's more of you can work that green manure into wherever you're at. Or if you're mowing, right? If you're mowing that up and you're mowing that clover up, save it and put it in your compost pile, because you're creating this really beautiful compost and green manure for all of your other plants. So yeah, so you can tell I love clover. I love it. It's good stuff.
We have some questions about clover.
Yeah.
This one is interesting. I want to replace my weed beds with clover. Any tips to do that? Just dig up the weeds and replace, or what?
Well, I would do both. So I wouldn't clear out all of the weeds because so here's the trick. The more bare area you have, the more things that you don't want growing there are going to grow there. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to kind of pull out maybe 60% of those weeds, throw in, get a whole big bag. I don't know how big your area is, but those one bag is supposed to be for 1,000 square feet. I would put it even all that seed in one small area too, because then what you're going to do is that clover, it's going to start germinating, especially in this weather, like this. And it's drought tolerant, which is beautiful. So once it gets pretty established, you're not going to have to water it, which is wonderful. But it will suffocate those weeds out. Now you may have to go back and you may have to make sure that those seed heads of the weeds or the plants that you don't want there, go to seed. That's going to be really important. But it will eventually suffocate out all of those weeds, because what it will do is it'll create this nice web, this nice mat of clover. So don't pull out all of the weeds because you don't want completely bare ground, but maybe get them out once your clover are about, I would say, 2 inches tall. Then you can start pulling those out, because then the clover is anyway going to completely suffocate those other weeds. Yeah, good question.
I also have a question. What about clover in a septic field?
Clover in a septic field is just, their root systems are not deep.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not real deep. It's not like you're putting a cherry tree there where the cherry tree is going to start into things, or willow or a dogwood. Willows and dogwoods notoriously get into systems, and so clover, not a problem. Their root systems are not deep enough to cause issues on any level. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Common pests. Here we go. So we've got our aphids. We have our red aphids, green aphids, and our black aphids. Those 3 pictures here. So we've got our green aphids right here. We've got the giant mature one and all the little baby aphids. And then we have our red aphids, and we've got our black aphids. Now you're going to find that you have maybe a powdery blue aphid you might find. Aphids are in full force right now just because of our humid weather in the last couple weeks. Huge pests for a lot of reasons. They love roses, they love anything with soft tissue, and they'll go for it. This is a thrip right here. That's called a thrip. And thrip love soft tissue as well. They will go through and just devour everything. Now, some of you may know that this is a weevil. There's lots of different types of weevil. This is a root weevil. There's strawberry root weevils that will just devour the root systems of your strawberry plants. But weevils are, they will go after rhododendrons and azaleas like nobody's business. They will eat camellias. Not just the soft buddy stuff, but they really love our evergreen native plants. Weevils love them. And then mollusks. Those are our snails and our slugs, our slimy friends. And so these are the most common that we have. And the funguses we'll get into caterpillars and worms. Caterpillars and worms can be a huge issue. If you have tent caterpillars up in your trees, please get rid of them as quickly as possible. They were a huge issue about 10, 15 years ago, but they're still, if you see them, please get rid of them. And worms, cutworms, things like that, they're pretty bad. So the ones we're seeing a lot of right now, we're seeing some weevils now. Of course, our mollusks are out because all those eggs have hatched, and aphids right now. Those are the big ones. Next poll.
Poll time. Here we go. Hang on. It is. Speaking of pests, what is your biggest pest? Is it insects, mollusks, snails and slugs, fungus, or other? And please answer in the chat.
When I think of fungus, I go, is there a fungus among us?
Right.
It's weird, but that's the first thing that comes to mind every time I think of a fungus.
Yep. I still think, fungus, but it isn't, I guess, fungi, and there's mushrooms, right, or fungus.
Yes, yeah.
Those are good, but not the ones that,
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the kind you want to.
Yeah, different kind, yeah.
All right, let's go ahead. I'll give everyone about 10 more seconds. They're answering quick on this one, so that's nice. And ooh, you're going to like this one. Here we go. Ending the poll and sharing those.
Oh, that's pretty good. It's pretty evenly spaced. What's the other?
Moss on the rooftops.
Oh.
So.
That would be more of a plant pest. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because there's you can use iron up there. It works pretty well, and they have liquid iron actually. Outside, well, that works quite well for moss. Yeah. If we know our shady spots, so we get that going. Well, cool. It's nice to see that's a little bit balanced in there. See if I can. There we go. All right. So, a couple things you can do. Okay. Soapy water. It's effective if it's done regularly and early on in your problem. Super effective on aphids and mites. Okay. And please do not use antibacterial soap. That'll cause more problems for you down the line. Remember, there are good, healthy bacteria that we want to keep going on in our soil and on our plants. So, but yeah, it is effective, but you've got to do it regularly. So like a couple times a week, and you got to catch it early on. It won't, like if you have like a massive aphid infestation, soap water is not going to do it. It's just not going to cut it. It's just not. You're going to have to go to get some bigger guns in there. And just spraying water on your plants to get pests off It's really not very effective. And also the timing of the day can also cause more issues later on. So if you're doing it in the evening, you're going to start getting into some issues with mildews and black spot and rust. We're getting more of the funguses that are going to start wanting to form there. And actually it encourages aphids to lay their eggs because they're like, ooh, there's water here. So using that soapy water, totally good. Make sure it's not antibacterial. Some of the safer treatments you can purchase, we've got neem, spinosad, BT is a bacterial combatant, DE, diatomaceous earth, good stuff. You can use it on almost anything. It's kind of amazing. And then the pyrethrins. So those you can use on any of the things listed. So aphids, hard body insects. DE works great on those hard body insects and the mollusks. Really effective, like super effective. It also works quite well with caterpillars. You know, say we've got our cabbage moths laying eggs. Everybody's been there at least once. You know, you get those little guys on all of your brassicas, you know, or they're eating stuff, and you know, you want to make sure they're not on there. Any kind of worm, those caterpillars, blueberry bushes, put that DE on there. You're going to have less worm infestations in that. Neem works fantastic for aphids and mites. Spinosad, if you've got a super big issue with those, hit it. Spinosad will also do the caterpillars, the worms, and the hard body insects. And the mollusks really, we'll go through the mollusks a little bit. There's a couple other things you can use, but DE is quite effective. Beneficial insects, I love them. They're like so cool. Living science right there. Lacewings, fantastic. Ladybugs. And actually those ladybird beetles, the larvae, they kind of look like little dragons. They're orange and black. They will eat more aphids than the beetles themselves, like the already transformed insect. It's super cool. So if you get ladybugs to lay their eggs to then hatch, and then you've got all these little guys running around, the little ladybug dragons. I like to call them ladybug dragons. I know that's not what they're called, but I like to call them that because they look like little dragons. Your aphids will be devoured, but you have to have the food for them, right? Nematodes are going to be in the ground, getting those root pests, right? It's going to go after all the larvae of these root weevils, of anything that is burrowing the mollusks. They'll eat the eggs of the mollusks. I mean, it's pretty awesome. And praying mantises. Now, the mantids are amazing because they will stick around the longest, okay? If they fancy your place, if they're like, ooh, this is a great place, I can eat a lot here, they will stay and they will keep nesting year after year. They're pretty neat. So the beneficial insects, if you have enough for them to eat, they will stay and they will be like your best friends in your yard forever. And again, they're going to take care of the aphids, the mice, the larvae, the weevils, fungus gnats. Nematodes eat those fungus gnats. It's pretty awesome. Here are some of the products. Okay, Bonide does a lot of environmentally friendly products that are not going to harm your animals either. So look for that Bonide product. Captain Jack's Dead Bug, that's going for those hard body insects, those caterpillars, that good stuff. All right, Captain Jack's is pretty great. There's a powder form. There's a ready to use spray bottle, neem oil, ready to use spray bottle. You can get it in as well. Great for mites and aphids. Triple Action Plus gets everything. Okay, it's a fungicide, insecticide as well. So it'll Triple Action Plus, if you're just having tons and tons of issues and you want to get just one thing that'll just take it all out, Triple Action Plus will do it. And that's like the big gun. Like you're like, forget it. I have too much going on. I'm just going to get it all, right? Know when you add these products that the beneficial insects will no longer go to those plants. Okay, so if you're using beneficial insects to combat your pests, then know that once you spray these products onto your plants, those beneficial insects will no longer want to go there. So you kind of have to be mindful in the balancing act that you're creating. You know, the beneficial insects will be there if you have enough food, but if you don't have enough food, the beneficial insects will not come or stay if you've introduced them to your yard. And then maybe you need to use these products. Now, again, these products are safe. They are environmentally responsible, and you know, they're not going to harm you in any way. Okay, please don't drink them. If you ingest them, of course, that's going to harm you. But okay, you know, having it on your hand, you know, on your body, if your animals brush up against it, nobody's gonna get hurt. Okay. Here's some of our cool beneficial insects that I absolutely love. So we have our mantid over here. We have our lacewing, and you can see why they're called a lacewing. You know, look at those wings. I mean, they're just gorgeous. They really are just gorgeous. And then we have our lady beetle, our ladybird beetle. I love this picture of our ladybird beetle because it's saying, "Hey, I got you. I'm eating your aphids." That's kind of what I feel like what it's saying. Now there is another one that I have forgotten to mention is our parasitic wasp. Our parasitic wasp is pretty amazing. It lays its eggs inside of aphids. So it creates these aphid mummies, and the larvae live off of that aphid and then emerge from this aphid body. And so parasitic wasps are pretty amazing and gross all at the same time. But if you have aphids, parasitic wasps are going to be like, yeah, you know, so you may find mummies, aphid mummies. And if you are finding aphid mummies, then that's a good sign. You know, they look like aphid cocoons almost.
We have a question about bugs. Oh, also, is that the same wasp that lays in caterpillars, those tomato caterpillars, the horned ones?
Yes, parasitic wasps. Yeah.
Someone wants to know about, they're going to plant clover. Which bugs like clover best? And I don't know if they must mean the ones that are going to get rid of the other stuff. Positive bugs.
You know, it's really for those pollinators. The pollinators really enjoy clover, bringing in those pollinators. I know that the parasitic wasp will sometimes eat off of it, but you know, it's they're more carnivorous than anything else. So yeah, really the clover is going to bring in those pollinators. You know, they're going to bring in more diversity into your yard, which is always really cool.
Great.
Yeah, we like those pollinators. Mollusks. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with mollusks. So I love them because they are just the most interesting little creatures. And they are frustrating because right now they're eating my cabbage. But you know, they do have a purpose. They do break down leaf litter. They are great composters. So if you can keep them in an area that is composting for you, they'll do that for you. They really do have a purpose, as annoying as they can be. So if you can move them to another area, that's great. Sluggo is probably going to be your best bet if none of the other things work. Okay. Beer traps, hey, they like a good brew at the end of the day, so they will go in there and then they can't come back out. So they'll demise happily.
Drown in beer, I guess is what
That's right. They will be very happy when they meet their end. Salting, it is, you know, but you have to put that directly on them. I find that to be quite, I don't want to say cruel, but it really, they squirm and they go, I just don't like to watch them do that. But if you have a stronger stomach than I, you can use salt, but you have to do that directly on them. Diatomaceous earth, they will not cross it. They don't like diatomaceous earth because what DE does is that it creates little lacerations on their underbelly, and they don't like that. They will eventually get dehydrated and they'll die. So they don't like to cross that DE line. You will have to reapply the DE if we get a lot of heavy rain, but they don't like it at all. Iron phosphate works quite well. Those iron phosphate solutions, that works well. Again, Sluggo, like they can't digest the Sluggo. So what happens is that basically it expands in their stomach and they die from internal damage. So it's kind of like if you gave birds uncooked rice, you know, they just can't, they end up dying from that process that happens with the food that goes into their system. So yeah, so that's super effective. I've used beer traps and they work great. And again, I've also moved them. You know, I won't kill them. Like, even though I have found so many in my cabbage right now, I get really frustrated, but I just take them off and I fling them into the woods, because I know that they're going to break down organic matter and they're going to create this really nice compost mulch in that area. I know they're going to do that for me. And so I kind of have that soft spot for them, but that's just me. So you have to decide how you feel about the mollusks, and then, you know, take those steps. One thing that I did not list is oyster shell. They don't like to cross oyster shells either. You can get crushed oyster shell at any hardware store, and you can also get them at feed stores like Wilco or Tractor Supply, and you can get like these huge bags of oyster shell. You can get little tiny ones too. We have them at Garden Sphere as well, and they don't like to cross that as well. And it's because it's hard, it scratches them, it cuts into their bodies, and they dehydrate and they pass on. So oyster shell works well too. There's a fungus among us. Powdery mildew, rust, and black spot. So this is what the rust will look like. Okay, my roses are exhibiting some rust right now. I'm a little disappointed, but they're still producing roses and they're gorgeous. So I have to kind of get on that. Powdery mildew, we are going to find those a lot on our squash, anything that's kind of a soft body. If we've had a lot of rain and a cool night, warm day, powdery mildew, best scenario for it. And that's what that looks like. This is a squash leaf with the powdery mildew. And then here is some black spot and a rose petal there. Some black spot, super common, right, on especially roses. And we do get the rust on our raspberries and things like that too. You know, you get these things on multiple plants. These are just the most common. Using the copper fungicide, way to go. Neem is your first step. Right? You can use neem. It'll be your first step. And that's if you have a very little amount. Of course, you are absolutely going to remove, if you only have a small infestation of this, you remove those leaves, remove those damaged leaves. If it's widespread, go straight to the copper soap fungicide. Just go straight to it because it'll be the most effective for the funguses. It just will. It will take care of that issue for you pretty well. You're going to have to reapply probably 2-3 times within, say, a month and a half period, 6-week period. But it'll absolutely take care of those funguses. Because I know that for me, I know that once we hit September, we get those cool nights and those warm days. I'm almost banking on that powdery mildew to show up. And right now, because we've had a lot of rain, and then of course it got really warm, I'm seeing a lot of rust. You know, and some of my my lupin has some rust right now because of that. And I do have some raspberries that are exhibiting some rust right now. I'm not seeing any black spot on plants, but you know, those are kind of the rust is a big one right now that we're seeing. And as we kind of move through the summer, it'll, you know, we'll get into more black spot. But yeah, are there any questions about fungus? It's kind of a weird beast.
Not at this point.
Right.
But that is a call to questions about fungus.
Wow.
So if you have one, please put it in the chat or the Q&A and we'll get Jenny to consider it. So.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right. And our next poll.
Here we go. This may be the last poll, I think. So here it is. Which mammals are you having trouble with in your yard? And this is a multiple choice. So if you have more than one, I know we get definitely here. People are putting other. Now, if you're going to answer other, make sure you tell us because curiosity more than anything. Small children? What's the other mammal? That's what whales? It's dolphins? No.
We have weasels up here. I'm in East Tacoma. We have some weasels up here, so it's a strange one, but we've got them. And rats and mice tend to be big ones.
Rats, yeah, that tends to be. Looks like we're getting just a few more. Looks like other is the thing, and no one's answering. So maybe there's some other things.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have. I don't know if they're necessarily. We have minks in our on Vashon here. We have minks, wild minks. There used to be a mink farm. But, oh, here we go. Oh, we got some answers.
Oh, cool.
Neighbors' cats because of the wood chips.
Yeah.
And our sweet dog tends to eat weeds and loves laying in our clover. That's got to be so. One of our dogs enjoys gnawing on our wisteria.
Interesting.
Like, she prunes it. It's really fascinating. She'll chew it all along because it's on our deck. And so I'll end the polling. Here's your answers here. Someone did say deer.
That is hilarious. Deer, of course. Oh my goodness. So dogs and cats. That is quite funny. That is quite funny. Cool. Yeah, deer are a tricky beast. So there's the liquid fence for the deer. You can get deer fencing, of course, but the liquid fence, actually, this deer and rabbit repellent liquid fence is super effective. And with the mole repellent, it's really effective. You have to reapply it 2 to 3 times over a period of time, but it actually is effective. It's interesting. You wouldn't think it would just be this liquid that, oh, it's just a liquid. I need to have a fence, or I need to have a sprinkler that has a motion sensor. It's going to squirt them. But tons of people come in and they're like, oh, we've got to get some for this season, and it just works so great. So for your dogs and your cats, mind you, I'm not surprised about those cats getting into your wood chips. You can use coyote urine. Now, I know this sounds really strange, but it will keep them off of your space, out of your area. It's basically marking it as a territory, and cats are fearful of coyotes, rightfully so. The coyote urine will do that. It'll mark out that territory, and they will be mostly deterred. Except you may have 1 or 2 bold cats who are like, I'm not scared of a coyote. I'm going to go in there anyway. And so, you always have 1 or 2 that are like that. The wisteria is interesting with the dog. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, that's just my dog, though. I don't know. She does like to chew on sticks in general, like she's teething, but she's old enough not to be. But yeah. we just have it. It covers one of our side railings on our deck.
Yeah.
And so if it sticks through the railing, she'll just gnaw on that and kind of trims it back.
That is so funny. And that's a habit. If it's the same thing, if your dog was doing that early on, it's just habit to do that. And so you have to find something else for them to chew on, or put something in front of it that you want them to chew on. Or maybe put a little basket with the other sticks and whatnot in there, and see
toys or whatnot, and see. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, it must be that texture too. So finding other sticks.
Okay.
Putting them in that space and see if the dog goes for it.
We don't mind so much because the wisteria is eventually going to pull our whole house down, I imagine, because it's one of those, like you talk about weeds, like it's beautiful when it's blooming, but it's also it's invasive, fairly invasive.
It is. It's like kiwi. If you don't have the right thing for it to hang on, it will pull everything down with it. It's very heavy. It's very heavy. It's gorgeous, but it's heavy. And then dogs do like to eat greenery. So if they're in the clover and laying in the clover, it's not going to hurt anything. eating the grass and eating the clover. You may want to provide some of that inside, get a small, low bowl planter, plant some clover in there, put it in the house. Because what they're looking for is something for digestion. It's helping with digestion when they eat that. So yeah, I always suggest if your pets are eating it outside and you don't want them to eat it, grow it inside, and the likelihood that they start eating it inside and outside, they'll go down outside because they're getting it inside. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, kind of like indoor cats that get the cat grass, get the wheatgrass inside. They use it for digestion. So yeah, it's one of those things. So that brings us to the end of our weeds, pests, and non-toxic solutions. I did want to mention ants very quickly. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. I wanted to mention ants really quickly. Now, I know ants, we've got carpenter ants are a huge problem, okay? If you have carpenter ants, yes, get rid of them. But if you see just your garden variety, little black ants, they're actually farming your aphids. So what they do is they milk the aphids, quite frankly, and they will herd them. So they're actually moving the aphids around and milking them kind of like cattle for their aphid honeydew, because it's very sweet, and the ants like that sweet honeydew. And so if you see ants in your garden, it's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? Ants are moving litter, wood chips, compost, they move things around. And so if you're seeing them in your yard or in your garden or in your greenery and things like that, it's okay. Don't worry about it, okay? If you're seeing carpenter ants, worry about where they are so they're not eating your home, and take action, of course. But your run-of-the-mill garden ants, they really are doing you a service, because what they'll do is with the aphids, what they'll do is they'll round them all up and they'll keep moving them and milking them up the plant. So it makes it really easy for you to kill them. They kind of centralize the aphids for you. It's really amazing. The ants will tell you where the aphids are. So yeah. They're not doing any damage.
That is fascinating. Yeah, we get a lot of the little ants. We just had carpenter ants come, so we had to call the professionals.
Yes, carpenter ants. Yeah, you gotta.
It's brutal. Well, yeah. They're not there, and then all of a sudden they're there, and you're like, what's that?
Yeah, and they're big.
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. I want to say something that. I know this is part of my job and I can volunteer to do this, but I learned so much just being here and part of this. And, I'm taking notes. I got copious notes for all this. And I'm always like, it's still this, the launch point though, that I have to work on. So, by the end of my week, I'm like, I don't want to go out there, but I get some great information. I am going to just start planting clover though. I think that's great. We have about an acre, so it'll be, always trying to make it more than just lawn, that's not so.
And you think about upkeep, because it only grows to a certain height. Or grass, it'll just grow and grow until it seeds itself. So clover really ends up making less maintenance for you too. It reduces so much while giving you a whole lot too. So it's a win-win in a lot of situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Less costly and good for our climate.
Right.
Even if it's just part of your lawn, I know a lot of people. Ruth Finn, who has taught a lot of our garden classes, she uses red clover as her winter cover crop.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then tills it under.
Yeah, uses the green.
We are planning upcoming webinars. Probably will not do any in August, but I'm starting to plan for fall and planning to do a couple more, I hope, yet in July. If you have topics, I'm looking for new topics because we don't want to keep repeating all of the others. That one I was not thinking of in July is an electric vehicle one, which is repeated. But if you have other topics that you're interested in, please let us know, put it in the chat or email me at ehouse@cityoftacoma.org. and give us some ideas. If they're sustainable and they kind of fit our mission, we would love to be able to present new ideas. So thank you all for being here.
Yeah, we do have a quick question. Someone wondered, does Jenny own Garden Sphere? And if, can they bring in a photo to get suggestions? I'm not specifically sure, but I know, Jenny, you don't own it. No, but you are one of many well-qualified employees who work there and give great, and you're a master gardener. There's more people there.
Yeah. So Gabe and Travis Valbert, they own Garden Sphere, and actually Travis opened that right out of high school, and Gabe was actually still in high school when they opened Garden Sphere, and they've been super successful, and they're just lovely, lovely people, and it's one of the reasons I keep working there. I've been there since 2012, and I absolutely love working there, and I love working with them, and they're very knowledgeable, and everybody in there, there's Audra and Joseph and Matt, and Colin, everybody is super knowledgeable. We're there to help you be successful in your yard. So it's all about that community and educating and helping you do the best that you can do. So,
and I want to throw in on that too, that they're all educate. I mean, they all have some sort of a degree. It's not just like off the top of their heads. So they really do work to help you get the answers. And my experience personally working with them and buying from them has been total honesty. I mean, if I ask for a plant and it isn't going to work, they tell me. Or if I have problems, they tell me. And they even have this thing at the seasonal thing at Christmas time. They sell Christmas trees, they will deliver them, and they will put them up for you, which is amazing to me.
Yeah, and
anyway, it's a really good store. They're up on North Proctor. Check them out.
Yeah. It's great. You'll get what you need, and you'll get the information you need. So.
Yeah. So even if Jenny's not there when you go in, you bring in your stuff. They'll be happy to help you out. I would like to say that, Janda, you are also hoping that there's going to be some more in-person EnviroHouse stuff coming up, but we'll see.
I don't know yet when we're going back. I'm hoping that I will get to be back in August with some limited amounts of visiting. I don't know if I'll have to do it by appointment or just limit the walk-in. I haven't been told yet.
And we're going to work on some virtual tours also, so more about the e-house itself.
Yeah, we're planning to continue doing virtual workshops as well as in-house once we get the chance to do that. And Gator will be working with me on doing a virtual tour of the interior and the grounds. We may not have that out quite yet, then we're looking at doing some fun games and some other virtual tools to be able to, for kids and adults. So stay tuned.
So, and don't forget, all these webinars are available on the YouTube channel through the city, and that's cityofTacoma.org/workshops. There's a list. We'll update it with this webinar as soon as it's posted to to our YouTube page. So keep an eye on that. You can register for future seminars there. You can email the e-house. You can get in touch with people through Janda at the e-house. So you can definitely, if you need to get in touch with Garden Sphere and you can't remember and you haven't found it on Google, just go ahead and do that. But thank you, everybody. It's been a great day, and we'll see you next week when we're doing heat pumps, or cooling pumps specifically.
Okay, all. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Gator.
Bye.
Bye, all.
Bye.